All right. Sweet. Well, we are live again. And Chris, I appreciate you hopping on here. This is going to be super interesting because I feel like you've got a very unique way of, I guess, kind of describing. I guess you're going to describe this in a minute, but you've got a unique way of how you've put yourself into the role that you're in as an IT director at a church. And so Bay Area Church, of course, being that church. And I've been interested in your story from the moment we started chatting. And I think that would be interesting for people that are viewing this as well. But would love for you to maybe do just a brief intro of yourself, how you got involved there. And I'd love for kind of the discussion to start there. And I've got plenty of questions for you and interesting things that I'm sure we'll uncover here. But figured I'd give you the floor here. So.
Yeah, so I'm now the IT director at Bay Area Church as of just a few months ago. But I've been working at Bay Area since middle of 2015, September of 2015. I was actually going to school for software development, and I was just looking for a place to get my foot in the door in the IT industry to get some experience and have under my belt before I got out into the real world. And it kind of God really showed up and kind of guided my path and all of that. I had my career counseling, whatever center at the school that I was attending at the time, reached out to me about this temporary position at a church. They were just looking for somebody to cover for a few weeks while somebody was out. And I wasn't a big fan of it because I really wanted to be, all in IT. I wanted to have a new position, a Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. I was in retail at the time, so I was really trying to get out of that. And it worked out differently than I expected it to. I came on here at Bay Area as a temp. I was just supposed to be here for a few weeks. And I'd say right around 2 months in, they were like, "Hey, so we think we're going to try and keep you if we can squeeze it into our budget. We'd really like to have a third in IT here." And so that was pretty exciting. And they kept to it. And by February of the next year, I was a full-time employee, working as a systems, or no, I was an IT support specialist, entry level. No professional experience, but I've been doing basically what I was doing then prior to that in my personal life. My dad's in IT, and so I've learned a lot of skills and stuff from him. So yeah, I started as a support specialist, and I was in that role for, I don't know, man, maybe five years or so, and they bumped me up to a systems analyst. I started taking on some admin roles, doing some systems management, and getting to learn like the network side of things. Most of the work that I have done here at Bay Area has been hands-on learning. There's not been much that's been like formal education. I do have some formal education. I was going to school, like I said, but I would say like little to none of it has been applicable here. And it's just because of the environment that a church has. A lot of things are, they tend to be like one-offs, or churches, they don't have the biggest budget. And so they're trying to do things with what they have. So they may not have the systems that I'm learning about in school. They may have some system I've never heard of. And so, I was tracing phone lines and doing all kinds of crazy stuff, crawling through holes that nobody knew existed, trying to find stuff and make it work back in the day. And we've come a long way since I started here. Our systems are a lot more up to date and capable. But I got to see it all develop, and it's been really fun to see it grow and expand.
Yeah, I think that's perhaps the most interesting thing for probably several of the people that might watch this, even after the live, is particularly along the lines of starting there, getting your hands dirty, and just making it happen without some of the formal training. Because I think a lot of times many ministries are put in a position where they've got someone who really isn't IT adept. Fortunately, you actually had some formal education, but in many cases, you've got people that do not know IT at all. And
Volunteers a lot of time.
yeah, yeah. So, I mean, that's super cool. And I think relatable to a lot of people in ministry where God calls you and then qualifies you next. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that that's pretty cool. What are some of the biggest challenges that you saw, with that hands-on learning and pushing yourself forward with that?
Yeah, so I mean, like I said, I was going into software development. I really had a different path in mind when I started working here. I was looking to finish that degree and go into, the coding kind of scene, and I was really excited for that. But being at the church, things were a lot more practical. They were working on a lot of older systems, and so I really I came into it also with a group of people who didn't necessarily know all about them. They knew they existed, but they didn't know how some of the things functioned. And a lot of my time was spent researching and learning about systems before trying to like take them over and make them work, or replace them entirely if we decided that it wasn't sufficient to keep some of those older systems. So like we had an old PBX phone system with analog phone lines running all over the place, and that room was a nightmare. It was there was a lot of wiring that I had to sort through. But like I went in and I traced everything, I labeled everything, I found where it all went, and I took the time to determine, what maybe even a better solution would have been. And thankfully, I had people around me and above me who were willing to listen and make those changes. And so we were able to improve on that. We switched, I think we switched to VoIP after that. But that our fire panels, IT at a church is interesting because you're not. I think in like kind of the corporate world, there are teams dedicated to different aspects of IT. You have a network team, you have a desktop support team, all these different teams for things. But in a church environment, we're doing all of that
Yeah.
under one title, and so it's hard to. It's funny when people ask me like, "Well, what do you do for Bay Area?" Well, I work in IT. Oh, okay. Well, what all do you do there? And I tell them it's easier to tell them what I don't do than what I do because there's just so many things to list out. So we've I've had to learn a lot on the fly, and I've looked it all up generally on my own to try and figure it out, and it's been fun. It's been great to see all the different things that I've worked on, and it's given me perspective when other people have similar issues. I can sometimes speak into that and offer a little help.
Yeah. I'd love to kind of pick into that a little bit. Um, Obviously, you have all of these tasks, and it's a mountain of tasks at a church. There always are. Because you're using kind of, I guess, little rigged versions of several different technologies, and sometimes things don't communicate well together, just because you got to find a creative solution and whatnot. So you're probably, I know you're very busy because you and I have talked about it, but what do you do to coordinate all of that? How do you delegate when you've got a team that's not specialized in those specific things and they're all doing several different tasks and whatnot? Are there programs that you're using? Are there strategies that you're using? Obviously, the Holy Spirit's involved in that, but I'm curious, how does that look? And what do you do to stay organized in that?
Yeah, so we have a ticket management system that we use, and so that helps quite a bit. It definitely took a while because that actually was implemented in the middle of my time here, and so it was a learning curve for a lot of people. It used to be, hey, if you need an issue or if you have an issue, send IT an email, and our inbox was miles long. But the ticket management implementation was huge for us, and that's helped a lot. That allows us to prioritize things on a screen where we can look at all the issues and kind of decide what needs addressed first. Here at Bay Area, we actually have a school, also Bay Area Christian School, and so it's kind of at our own discretion, but we have to look at what issues are coming in and prioritize them based on what's going on. The school operates 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, and the church is operating typically 2 days a week, Wednesday and Sunday. And so if there's something, that the church needs, but the school has other needs that are necessary during the week, we might take a Thursday to go make sure we have everything on the school side checked out before we look at church issues. So we kind of have to prioritize things in our own mind. But the Asset Essentials software has been huge for us in organizing those thoughts a little bit better.
Yeah, I can only imagine it's probably better than getting that just beefy list of emails, and then in the email you've got 30 previous emails that are back and forth trying to solve something. It just gets messy, and it's nice to have a tool or two to facilitate that. And I mean, you being in software development as a passion, I'm sure. Do you dabble in creating things that might help you, or do you things that might automate stuff for you at all?
No, it didn't take me too long. I spent a couple of years doing software development as my kind of focus in school, and then came the math classes and some of the coding classes, and I realized very quickly that was not something I wanted to do day in and day out for the rest of my career.
Yeah.
And so I shifted a little bit. I tried to shift towards kind of the higher level software development, design and functionality and stuff. And that still just didn't do well for me. So I've made a complete shift over to like the business side of things. I'm looking at a business management degree now, and I think it fits kind of what I'm better at a lot more than the software development did. And so I've shifted my focuses a little bit. It is cool to talk about, and I like to look at the coding side of things. I have some courses from old that I used to like try to do some self-learning with. And I like to look back at that stuff and play with it every once in a while, but it's definitely not a priority for me anymore.
Yeah, well, that's fair. I totally get that. I mean, along the lines of automation, though, if you had one part of your day that you could automate from an IT perspective, what would it be if there was a way to do that?
Yeah, I think it would probably be some way to manage my meetings. It's I wouldn't say I have a ton of them, but a lot of the time notes or agendas aren't necessarily applicable to me. And so if there's ways that I could get the information without spending too much time or effort on it, it'd be great. But it's kind of the nature of the job, especially being the director now. I need to be involved and aware. And so I got to sit through those.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, as long as it's not a meeting to discuss meetings, it's usually somewhat effective. So, but we've all fallen into that trap before at some point. So, but kind of circling back on some of the stuff with the older systems, finding creative ways to manage systems and whatnot. What are some of the most, I guess, maybe creative solutions, or maybe something that's just exciting for you when it happened, but that you found for Bay Area as you guys have been, tweaking some of the IT? What are those creative solutions that really made a difference or an impact that you've been really proud of?
Yeah, I would say the two biggest ones for me would be going from that old PBX phone system to a VoIP system. Like, that was game changing.
Yeah.
I wasn't having to, if somebody had a phone issue originally, I would have to literally trace a phone line and go find if there was a break in it or some kind of like interference. Like, it took a lot of time.
It's expensive.
So, we did have the in-house tools to take care of it. So thankfully we weren't like paying somebody to come out.
That's good.
But again, that was one of those things that I had to just pick it up and learn it. Like, there was nobody to teach me. There was nothing available to me for that. So I figured it out and made it work. So the challenge was fun. I will say that it was a good time to learn. And then our most recent one actually is we use a lot of Mac devices. In fact, we're mostly Mac on our school and our church. And we recently started migrating to Mosel device management, and that has been a game changer for our time because it allows us to kind of set up profiles and just assign a device to somebody, and it handles the configuration and implementation. We go give the device to somebody, get them to sign into it, and they're rocking and rolling. So where it used to take us a few hours to get a device ready for a user, I can have one ready in an hour or less, and
That's so nice.
it has greatly impacted how much we can get done in a day.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, especially with any amount of attrition, whether someone's moving somewhere, whether you're hiring and staffing out, a different department, the amount of time saving there. I mean, if you got 4 people that jump on in a day, you're stuck on a provisioning day is really all you're doing at that point.
Yeah.
So with this, I'm sure it's a lot more pleasant to put those kind of things together.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, well, that's cool. Well, I know. So last week, I think it was last week, I had my friend John on, and he works with a company called Holy Secure, and we were talking about kind of cybersecurity and how churches can afford that kind of thing, and maybe some creative strategies and whatnot. I'm curious from your perspective how you guys have approached that. Obviously, not diving too deep into sort of the cyber landscape there, but very curious, like, what are some of those things that you guys have done to be able to creatively save on cyber solutions and whatnot, if anything, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah. We've done a little bit. I think some of it we were forced into. It wasn't really something we were looking at, but we ended up having to choose that route. We had, as it goes in a church, we had an assortment of devices as far as like switches and APs and network coverage. It was kind of all over the place. So it took us pretty close to 6 years, I think, to fully implement it. But we over that time frame have finally gotten all of our network infrastructure switched over to Fortinet devices, and so that's been a huge blessing. We've been able that allows us to do traffic shaping and be able to have a single interface to look at, and it helps with troubleshooting. It helps with network management. Like that's another thing that's been self-taught. I haven't had the opportunity to really take some classes or anything to learn that. Networking is definitely not my strong suit. So that's helped a ton. And then on the internet side of things, we actually had some DDoS incidents,
Yeah.
and it was not something that we, I guess, expected to have to deal with.
Yeah.
But it showed up, and we were out of service for a couple of days trying to figure out how to navigate that. And thankfully, we were able to pull the trigger on some DDoS mitigation through our ISP, and that really has resolved it. The upfront costs were more than we were wanting to deal with, but management of it going forward hasn't been too bad. But yeah, it's been, some of it's taken time. Like I said, the network infrastructure wasn't something we did overnight. Being a church, we didn't have the ability to pull the trigger on tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars, and so we had to eat it a little bit at a time, but we got it done.
Yeah, I think that's great too. I mean, again, you got to get creative. It doesn't take hundreds of thousands of dollars to get these kind of things done. It just might make it a little bit easier. But if you can get creative, and again, to kind of the point of God's creativity, right, and the way that He's made us in His image, we have that creative gene, so to say, which is pretty cool. That we can come up with these kind of solutions in ministry to put things like that together and to build solutions that will work that might not otherwise have been thought of, which is pretty cool. So I think that's pretty neat. Yeah. I'm also curious too, another thing here, obviously IT impacts ministry immensely. And sometimes it's hard to see that when you're on the front end, but when you're on the back end of the IT, you see it all the time. And so I'm curious if you had kind of one word for, the front office staff, if you will. How would you describe your role to them, and how would you describe, I guess, the way that your ministry impacts the overall ministry at the church?
I think you don't mean literally one word, do you?
Uh,
Okay. Uh, I think support. We really are um, a support team, and whether they see it or not, that's what we do. And so uh, we don't always get recognized for the work we're doing, but we're here, and there'd be a lot of things that would not happen if IT wasn't able to operate efficiently and effectively. And every once in a while, people do recognize it, and working in a church and a school has been pretty fulfilling. Especially on the school side, teachers tend to recognize the work we put in, and they understand that the support is invaluable to them. And so it's nice to be able to help, to know that I'm helping people to do their job well and not just doing my own job well.
Yeah, I think that's great. How do you see that evolving over the next couple of years as far as an IT role goes for a church? Are you seeing trends yourself? We obviously see some on the side of doing IT work for several churches, but I'm curious for you, what does that look like over the next few years in your role?
Yeah, we're actually working with, I guess we're planting a church. And so getting to have a hand in helping them develop an IT department, or just their technology for
Yeah,
whatever they try to do, is something that kind of excites me. I think they're looking to kick off services here in the next 8 months or so.
great.
And I've already been in contact with the pastor who's going to be leading that church, and so getting to see them going out and doing more with whatever help we can offer is something that kind of excites me. Um, so we're not just confined to the walls of this campus. We get to share it with others, and help uh, them grow and accomplish a lot of what we've already had the chance to accomplish.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love that. We did a church plant recently. We actually planted September 15th of last year. And so it was quite the adventure, and it was a lot of fun. And so that's cool to hear that you're sort of involved on that end with supporting that pastor from an IT perspective. And it's definitely, it's unique. It's quite the experience. So I love
Yeah.
to hear. Yeah. Well, kind of as we sort of jump towards the end of the discussion here, I really would love to get, number one, a piece of advice that you'd give to any ministry, organization, nonprofit that might be struggling with their IT needs. One piece of advice, if you had that. And then in addition to that, if you're open to it, and anybody who was viewing, maybe other church IT professionals, if they had any way to connect with you and you'd love to share that, you're welcome to, or welcome not to, if you want that privacy, of course. But curious how they would find you. And then finally, just some final thoughts. So piece of
Sure.
advice, contact, and thoughts.
All right. Um, I think, as far as advice goes, something that has been at the forefront of my mind for the entirety of my time here at Bay Area is that it can get frustrating sometimes. There's definitely hard times. There's times when things aren't going to go the way you want them to, or you don't get to accomplish the goals you want to accomplish. But ultimately, like, I view my employment here as an employee of the Lord, and my my in both my personal and my professional life, I know that people will disappoint me, but God never will, and He has my best interests in mind. And so, uh, knowing that things in my work aren't going to necessarily be great all the time, helps me approach those with more of an open mind, I guess. So it allows me to not worry about the whatever issues at hand and how it's affecting me or how I feel about it, but approach it with the thought of, well, what can I do to actually improve on this situation? And that's helped me a ton.
That's great. I love that.
Um, and yeah, I'm pretty active. I mean, I don't post a lot or do anything on LinkedIn. I use it mainly for connections and keeping my personal information up to date for my professional profile, I guess. But yeah, people can feel free to add me on there. I respond to messages all the time. I pay attention to it. I look through the news every once in a while and just see what's going on in the world.
That's
But
scary to do.
yeah, that's probably the best way to get a hold of me. I don't really use social media a ton.
Yeah,
I use it just for a laugh every once in a while. That's about it.
that's great. That's awesome. Well, cool. Well, any final thoughts or anything like that for everybody, or otherwise we wrap up?
I think you got it all out of me, really. I enjoy working at a church. It's fulfilling. Um, it's not where I saw myself 10 years ago. I was looking to go into the IT industry in the corporate environment and making tons of money and doing all the things I wanted to do. But I'm grateful for the plan that God put in front of me instead. It's given me opportunities to grow in ways that I didn't think were ever going to approach me. And I've gotten to meet people that I didn't get expect to meet. And it's just been it's hard to consider leaving a place like that when you have the environment you do.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. That's well said, man. I appreciate you taking the time today. I think this is incredibly valuable. I learned a couple of things myself too, which is pretty cool. So
Good.
um, I'm really excited about that, and I think that everybody's going to love this one. So thank you very much for being a part of it. I appreciate you, and looking forward to staying connected here. So
Yeah, I appreciate it, Zach.
awesome. Thanks.